12 p.m. PST, live from Los Angeles for me. Ayries is in some weird mountain town in some part of the United States. And Montana, I think she's Montana. She's just getting water. She'll be back in a moment. And welcome back to another show, another architecture of business, our free mastermind I've been enjoying. And I've really been enjoying the comments on, here's Ayries. She's coming back. Sound effects. Really enjoying all the comments and all the conversations we've been having on the Facebook group. And again, a reminder, that really is where the power of the mastermind comes from, is from the interaction. And so if you're just kind of lurking and feeling a little shy, feeling a little, I don't know what to say, well, that's the best thing to say on the group. So we have weeks 4, 5, and 6. This is week 4, and we'll be talking with Ayries around the concept of marketing and branding. And Ayries has been a friend of mine for 6 years at this point.
Roughly. And
we've had many different roles in each other's lives. Most recently, she is my branding and marketing guru. She's the one who's running my show. And I think she's going to show you where I started to where I am now. And I just been overwhelmed by the impact she's had on my business. And welcome to the show, Ayries.
Am I ready to go? Hey, everyone. So my name's Ayries, like Rob said, and I'm the founder of DMY Media, which basically means, it's short for Discover Your Muse. And the reason I named my company that is, I think to help really set the stage for where my methodology comes from, is that I believe that a strong and powerful and very transformational company comes from a visionary leader who can then articulate and find a team to bring that to the world. So that's really kind of the foundation of what I see and believe and help companies do, is help them internally, discover that muse, and then how do we use the tools available, social media, website, branding, marketing, to bring it to the world and let people know about it, basically, and attract your ideal customer.
So I love that. So the word muse is a powerful word, basically in the language. In historic form, it's more like you have a writer who has a muse, in like a man who has a woman muse, the inspiring or ascending. It's kind of like the historic piece. And so, but what you're saying is we all have our own inner muse. Mm-hmm. So it's about discovering your own and then using that to extrapolate your message out into the world.
Yes. And really, I think the big thing I want to make a clarity here too, I think some people struggle with, there's like the internal thing and the belief, the mission, the thing you want to bring to the world. And then it's figuring out, how am I going to do that as a business, right? There's a lot of different forms that it could take, because there's a million different ways to start a business, run a business, and provide a service, right? So it's figuring out, what is my vision? And then what is the best way to bring that into the world for me, for my particular long-term goals, my revenue goals, my lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera.
So when we started, I actually consulted for you, if I remember back, a couple years ago. And I remember talking to you, and I remember it just being a concept. And like, okay, let's put some numbers. Like I did your forecast. Let's take some numbers so you knew who you could hire and when you could hire. And so what has been your own journey? What has been, in terms of your own muse, coming in from a concept, because you started from scratch, like really from a blank screen, a blank piece of paper, scratch. And now my impression of how busy you are, and where you're at, you've built a successful business in what, 2 years, 3 years at this point?
2-3 years, yeah.
Yeah. So what's been your process with your muse to coming out and building the business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say my biggest one was, over the last 3 years, basically, I built a business from nothing to, mid 6 figures. And it's been this journey of figuring out, how do I want to serve people? And then how do I face reality very raw and real as it is, where I'm at financially, where I'm at education level, where I'm at, in the way in which I can actually help people and provide value to them. And then being very honest with myself of where I'm at, and being like, okay, well, this is where I want to be. And now how do I reverse engineer to get from where I'm at, very honest, to to where I want to go in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so I think I started out with these really big, almost naive beliefs and kind of a lack of like, oh, numbers, they'll figure themselves out, they'll do these things. And very quickly got schooled on the fact that, well, one, your numbers are very important, especially when I originally talked to Rob. I was like, okay, wow, my numbers. How do I turn a profit? How do I understand what revenue is? How do I get paid the right amount for what I'm doing? How do I help my clients, one, help them with revenue since I do marketing and branding, but, if I, as a business, how do I actually provide value and enough kind of value that people are going to pay me for that? And I feel really good about what I'm actually doing. Because there's a lot of different places where I was like, oh, maybe I'll do this and I'll do this. And I really hated it. I really hated what I was doing. And so it was definitely a process of, and I'll go into this a little bit in my presentation, consistency, and then continuing to have a very raw and very real, like continual look at myself and my ego. Like I remember in the very beginning, I was like, I only want to work with thought leaders and revolutionary people. And then I quickly learned they're very difficult people to work with. And a lot of the times they're not willing to do, certain things, or their vision, they're just not willing to do certain things. So I realized I didn't really like working with that sector. And I was like, I actually like working with, like I have a client that's a plumbing company. And I was like, wow, I love this feeling that I'm providing this service that's growing their company and going to be a legacy they're going to pass on to their children and supporting their local community. And I realized that the vision I had of helping people and helping them use business and their dreams and their passion as a vehicle to meet their lifestyle needs or make the world a better place, or whatever their mission was. So it was, I think my muse all along has been, is how do I take my core belief systems that I have, which I identified at the beginning of my business, and then keep those as I iterate at the different ways in which I'm helping people. Because my company and what we do is definitely kind of shifted over time, and the exact process we want to do. And then also just being really real with the reality of our economic system that we have now, of how capitalism works, of how economies work, of how accounting works, how money trades hands, and being okay with that system, even if there's places where I don't agree with certain things, or I'm like, capitalism's evil in all these ways, or no, whatever, the stories I had were, but figuring out, okay, well, how could I leverage this game, which is business, the game of business, to do the most good in the world and treat it as a inanimate object almost. And Dave Burns will probably get into this more. Him and I have had many conversations about it, but just about how money is this inert thing, and then you can use it, and making revenue for your company really is just a tool to get this thing that you want to do in the world, or serve the world in some way, or have a certain lifestyle that you want to have. So that's definitely, my muse has definitely been finding out in the beginning what my core ethics and beliefs were, and then what my long-term vision was. Like, what do I want to be in the next 20 years? And how am I going to get there? And then consistently and persistently navigating everything that pops in my way to get there.
And it sounds also like your willingness to let go of things that don't work for you. Like I've met lots of entrepreneurs who stubbornly keep to their core belief when they start on day one, without remembering the evolution, one, of yourself as a person, two, evolution of your business and the world around us. Where things were when I started my business just 5 years ago is very different than it is now. It constantly is evolving. And so the importance to not stubbornly hold on to, I think it should be this.
And I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned, is the reality of impermanence, and the reality of, one, just because I have also an idea that I think is amazing, doesn't mean anybody else wants to pay any money for it. Mm-hmm. There's a place for it in the economy, or it's what my market wants, right? So it's learning to have that, oh, my market actually wants this. Okay, well, how does that fit what I want to do? And then how do I provide that service to them, versus being like, I'm only going to do this one thing even if, I know there has to be people who are going to buy it out there somewhere. And that's where I keep an anchor to the much bigger vision of like, this is the thing I want to have long-term. I don't actually care how I get there, but I'm going to get there. And so I'm going to use this business as the tool to reach that, end goal.
Great. All right. Let's shift, amazing conversation. Let me say that first, and interesting. But let's shift more into the marketing and branding focus in a bit. So you're discovering your muse, discovering what you want. You're in this wave, and how do you use branding and marketing? And maybe if you want to share your screen as well, you could take over that screen save. How do you translate that into marketing and branding that people want to buy your shit?
Yes. I actually have a slideshow, and I was going to actually go. I'm a very strategic and very organized person as well, so I prepared a whole live slideshow with pretty little graphics and everything for you guys. So we can dive into that right now.
Let's do that. I appreciate that. Okay. And we want to keep time 45, so we'll go for another. We got another like 35 minutes, and then we'll.
Great. I'll buzz through this then.
Excellent.
Okay, share my screen.
Chat's open as well. If you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free. I'll watch the chat screen. And
okay, everybody can see my screen, right?
Yep, we got it.
Great. Okay, so the thing about branding and marketing, and I really feel like this quote, marketing without design is lifeless, and design without marketing is mute. So it's really this idea of branding and marketing are two parts of one system, right? Like a lot of people will be like, oh, you need to do marketing and run Facebook ads. And then other people are like, it has to be pretty, and you have to have a logo, and you have to have all these things. But really, for true business success, you need both of them, and they have to be integrated well. So just think about that kind of as you're going forward. Marketing and branding are one of the same. Okay, so what is a brand? Your brand is the heart of your business ecosystem. A brand is the art of aligning what you want people to think about your company with what people actually do think about your company. So it's, well, thinking about who am I, who is my company, who does it serve, and how do I want the world to perceive that? Because that is really how you create a willingness to pay in certain ways. Think of luxury brands. It's all about their image. The only reason people spend that amount of money on anything is because of the image a luxury brand creates. And then, so when you think about, if you look at this little diagram, you see brand, and then you see brand strategy, design strategy, unified voice, right? So you start with understanding what is my brand, and then understanding that affects your marketing and your sales. What channels am I going to use? What visuals am I going to use? How's my photography going to look? How do we shoot video? It's going to affect your management. And how does your management run your company? Because your brand is also your service and your products. So it's like, how you actually manage and run that company, your finances, because of the style of products you offer. Are you an e-commerce store? Are you a massage therapist? Are you a plumber? Are you a thought leader? Are you selling digital products? So all of these different things are affected by your brand and what you understand your brand to be when you first found, your company and begin to do, the work that you're doing and start your company. So just thinking about it kind of in that perspective of when you figure out what is my brand, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more with like exactly how to figure that out in a bit, but think about it, it's everything. It's not just the logo, it's not just pretty colors, it's not just the website. Everything is part of your brand, and the more clarity you have on your brand, the more clarity you'll have in figuring out your marketing, your customer service, who you're going to hire for human resources, what kind of financial structure you need. And then
just remember too, we'll give these slides, so don't worry about like copying or, we'll give you definitely a copy of these slides, so they'll be available along with the replay.
Have this to look at and keep looking at and have a little cheat sheet with. And then just thinking about with a brand, so if you're ever hiring a graphic designer or anything like that, you want to build your brand to be as authentic, flexible, longevity, vision, and differentiation. I'll get into those a little bit, but those are really the things that you want to think about is how authentic is my brand to me and to my market? Like, does it feel like it's really clear and raw and connectable? And then is it consistent across all my platforms, right? Is it something that I could put on social media, put on a website, put on the side of a truck, put on a t-shirt? Is it flexible? Is it going to be able to grow with the ever-changing technology that's out there? Longevity really looks at, can this brand sustain for the next, I figure most of you probably don't want to have a company for 5 years. You want to have one for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Does it have a big enough vision and a clear enough visual appearance to be able to expand all the way through for the next 15, 20 years? Vision is back kind of what I said with the leader. Is it founded in something really powerful and a big idea that really, as a leader, you want to bring to the world? And the differentiation is, how are you different from your competitors? You always must be different from your competitors. So how brand clarity, yep.
So there's a question from Mark, and I don't think you have to answer just now, but just to have in your mindset, he asked, how do I derive that clarity? That was a question that he has. Yep. So you can feed that into your next phase.
Awesome. Okay. How brand clarity affects your business success. So differentiation is the key to business success. And what that basically just means is, when you think of businesses, if something is kind of the same as everything else around it, you're just going to kind of scroll right past it. But if it's different, it kind of creates a pattern interrupt, and you're like, oh, what is this thing? Interesting. So you really want to understand, how is my product, how is my service, how is what I do, how is the way I do it different than all the competitors in my field? And then knowing how this is different. So say if you're a massage therapist, you have a special technique that you use with a series of homemade oils that cause something in the skin to detoxify. That's your special differentiation than other people, right? So it's like, how does that save my customers either time? How does it improve their quality of life? How does it make them look cooler? How does it make them feel better? How does it get them there faster, better than my competition's way? So you really want to think about, how am I different from my competition, and how does it serve the main need of my clientele? Maybe they want to feel better if you're a massage therapist. How does this make them feel better, faster, better, quicker than the competition? And so to be able to figure this stuff out and this kind of answers the question, is what you need to know is you need to know who your target market is. So exactly who are you serving? And if you just say as a massage therapist, I'm serving people with back pain, that's a very vague market, right? So it's figuring out, I'm serving people with back pain who are, they're much more open-minded, so they're interested in alternative therapies, and kind of figuring out exactly who they are on a behavioral level too, like what kind of, how do we say this? Your target market is like, think of your most ideal client, and then you kind of extrapolate and pull that out. And those are the exact people that you want to serve. And then why you serve them. Basically, what problem are you solving? So really just knowing what problem they have, what pain, need, desire they have, and how you solve it. And then and how your solution is different than anything they've seen before. So that's a really key thing, right? It has to be, if you just put a lose weight in 30 days diet pill on the market, no one's probably going to buy it, because there's a billion of those and none of them work. But if you have, take this pill and do this 7-day exercise and fat burning, whatever, with this meditation, and you'll lose weight in 7 days, that's something new, interesting that people haven't seen before, and it might work. A 30-day fat loss pill, probably not going to work because they've already seen it. So thinking about those different kind of tenets of who's my market, what problem am I solving for them, and how is the way I solve my problem different and better or faster or any cooler, saves them money more than my competition. And so this kind of goes back to strategic positioning, where you think about, this is just a fancy word for how am I different, right? I'm going to position myself in my market as different than other people. And so you think about, what is my purpose, what builds brand loyalty, because people get in line with your mission. And then how am I different? How am I executing that? So thinking about, where do I sit within my industry? And then how do I execute? Do I use Instagram? Do I use Facebook? Do I use a website? Should I use a mobile app? Thinking about and the way you want to think about that is, where does my market hang out, right? So if you have mostly teens, you probably want to use Snapchat or Instagram because they're most likely there. Probably not as much on Twitter. If you have a really politically academic market, they're probably on Twitter. They're maybe more likely on Facebook than they are on Instagram. So thinking about, who is my market, and therefore where do they hang out and how do they like to receive content, And therefore, how do I reach them on that channel, basically? And then value is what is the value that I'm providing to people? And therefore, how much are they willing to pay me to solve that problem for them?
So let me interrupt here for a second. So I can feel like this might really seem overwhelming, this amount of
Yes.
information already. And I know when I started, it took me like 4 different iterations to figure out my brand. And
Yes.
It wasn't until I really hired Ayries that it felt 100% aligned with it. And that meant a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of thought and a lot of work. So the first thing I want to say is my impression is you don't need to do this perfectly out of the gate. Now, if you do it perfectly, you will save time and money. I will say that. And,
a lot of time.
A lot of time and a lot of money. I know this personally. Like, I had a guy last year build me a website. He's a good guy, very fine, talented designer, but didn't really have the depth of brand knowledge that I needed. I hired him because it looked good, and then I learned through the experience that it wasn't enough. So my point is this, is that if you feel pressure in your system right now to feel like you have to get this right from the gate, it's unlikely you do, because this is an evolution. This is a process. You can go slow with it, but don't take your eye off the prize of learning this thing, because this is what will make your business successful, and it might be a journey with lots of dips and valleys to get here.
And I think that's the biggest thing, like Rob was talking about, is when you start to get into branding and marketing, it becomes, oh my God, it's this huge overwhelming thing. When you start thinking about online channels and websites, it's really easy to get overwhelmed, which is also why people usually hire experts, or they hire coaches or mentors to help them guide them through that process. But it's about consistency. So continuing to learn, continuing to ask questions, continuing to grow, and continuing to think about, how am I serving people? How can I serve them better? And how can I articulate that as clearly as possible so that they can hear me, kind of like a big neon sign that I solved this problem, right? So your brand identity is just basically color palettes, photography, styling, mission, taglines, web design. So when you think of branding, you think of your brand identity, all the logos and pretty visual things, right? And then how your brand relates to marketing. So don't get caught up on this funnel. It's basically just saying that people, they have a problem, they engage with, maybe an advertisement, and then they go to a purchase, and then they come out, right? So that's kind of basically it's called a marketing funnel. People come in the top, they find out about you, they go through your process, and then they purchase and buy something from you. That's like the basics of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also thinking about, and this goes back to, what I was talking about, what channels do you want to use, where the biggest thing I always hit home with people is you have to understand your market on a very intuitive level. And if you're at a place in your business where you're like, I don't know what their pains are, I don't know what their fears are, I don't know what they really want, that's where you have to do that hard research of just being like, okay, I'm going to go ask questions. I am going to go talk to people. I'm going to get in Facebook groups. I'm going to read Amazon book reviews for industry leaders in your field. Read Amazon book reviews. They're great, of what people say, what they think about the author, what they think about the content, what was missing, and getting really creative with, how do I figure out who these people are? Talking to your past customers and figuring out what they really loved about what you did. And then, so when you think about it, you're thinking about, how do I move them through where they begin to connect with my content, either via social media, my website. There's a commitment because they go to my website. I have emails, social medias to stay connected to them. And then there's some kind of experience they have, right? Depending on your product. Maybe if you sell chocolate, it's taste and smell. If it's a massage, it's touch and, hear. If you're, so different things, but figuring out what is that experience that people have that'll lock it in their memory when they work with me. And then, of course, satisfaction, and then follow up in some way. So this is kind of the path that people go through, right? They hear about you, they anticipate connecting with you, they read your new blogs, they watch your new videos on YouTube or Facebook, and they really love your content. Then they purchase, and they have an experience with you. And then you follow up in some way and say, hey, how was that experience? Tell me more about it, or, oh, here's, this little free thing that we did because you bought this product with us. And then they become an advocate.
I love, go back to that slide for 1 second. I love this concept as well. And it's something I can tell you my own personal experience here. When I started, I just thought about the masses. How do I get out to the masses? It's all about like, how do I get those 100,000 followers on Instagram? Or like which was really ego based in the term of it. Like I wanted to feel good about myself based on some numbers. And then I read a book called Monster Loyalty, which is a book about how Lady Gaga, whatever your opinion is about Lady Gaga, I think she's the bomb. But what how she built such a following around her. And she said she really dedicated everything and focused on her top 1,000 fans. Like everything she does is for those 1,000 people. And so what I'm seeing in this slide, Ayries, is really a commitment on one. Of course, you want to build your brand. You want to make a lot of money. You want to impact a lot of people. That's why we're here. But also with the mix of paying attention to the individual people, because they're the ones who are going to teach you constantly how to do it better and better and better and better.
And really thinking about too, the beauty of what we have nowadays is niche marketing, right? There's people like, have you guys ever heard of Twitch? If you haven't, it's this whole platform. There's people there who make millions of dollars. I don't even know what they do. They make funny videos and people pay them to make those funny videos. So it's all about understanding your target market, but then what is that niche? And then how do I really connect to those people who I'm serving? And I like to think of my target market as my beloved, right? Because they're the thing that make my business thrive, but they're really my reason for like doing what I do is to serve them. So how do I create content on social media that transforms them or tells them a story in some way? How do I create my website so they have the experience that they need to have on there to find the right content, to get the thing that they're looking for? How do I write my email, my email marketing or my social media content to stay connected to them for answering the questions that they have? And it's remembering it's not about me. It's my vision, yes, but it's about them. And so everything that you do goes through this process of creating this experience, this very dynamic experience for your beloved, which is your customer.
First time I've heard that. I like that.
So now when I kind of want to pull it all the way back, where when you begin to look at branding and marketing, it's like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming, which is why a lot of people kind of either get paralyzed or they do a million things, or they just get paralyzed and don't do anything. So I often get asked, well, what social media channel should I use? Or should I build a website? Or how expensive should my website be? Or should I do FaceTime videos every single day? Should I buy recording equipment? Do I need a professional logo or can I just do it on Fiverr? And so what I often say is these are the wrong questions to ask, right? And a lot of people, when they start a business, and I've made this mistake in the beginning, or variations of this, and I work with a lot of clients who've done this, you're asking the wrong questions, right? Because if you approach the process of figuring out, and it feels like it might take forever before you bring anything to the world, where you want to be careful not to just get paralyzed and they're like, oh, I have to do more research and figure things out till it's perfect, and actually launching, but finding that sweet spot of figuring out, okay, I'm doing enough research on who my market is, what other competitors are out there and what they're offering, how they're making their thing special. How are my competitors, advertising? Are they doing it on ads? Are they running Google ads? Are they doing Facebook ads? Are they all over Facebook? Do they have a huge Instagram following and that's how they're getting a lot of people to their website? So if you don't know what kind of website you should build, if you don't know what kind of social media channels you should use, this kind of sucks, but it's like, okay, I need to go back then and do the research to figure out what channel I should use so that when I do it, I'm executing in a way that makes a lot of sense. Instead of being like, I'm just going to grow Instagram because I think I should, it's doing the due diligence and thinking, oh, actually Instagram, like I had a plumbing company, they wanted to do Instagram and she started posting on it. And I was like, why are you posting on Instagram? You're a plumbing company. No one follows plumbing companies on Instagram. And so thinking But they didn't know that. So they had started doing that work and they're like, we're not getting any engagement. I don't know what channels to post on. And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back and really do the research. Like the first couple months I worked with Rob, that's all we focused on, was really figuring out who is his market. What is the brand voice going to be? What is the messaging going to be? How do we connect to these people? How do I differentiate from my competitors? And then when you finally get to the point of being able to actually build out content for social media, launch a product, it's basically like just dropping the pieces in, because you've done so much research, you already know exactly what to do, more or less. I mean, there'll still be some testing and figuring out this isn't actually the best channel, this isn't the greatest way to reach my people. But more or less, it's the more research you do, the more observation you do, the more testing, and the more actual like on-the-ground connection with your market and your industry, the better chance you have of launching something successful the first time you go around. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't be taking clients or anything like that, but that's part of the process too, is, you know, getting clients for your massage industry or your body work, and then, you know, really talking with them, connecting with them, investigating, well, what worked? What didn't work? Do I feel like I got paid enough? I don't feel like I got paid enough. How did I find that person? Was it referral? Did they say they found me through Instagram? And, you know, ask in this beginning phases of a business, and in every phase of business, continuing to ask, how can I improve, and really what does my market need, and how do I reach them best? And that's going to be a continual process too, because channels change, social media changes, websites change, how people interact with technology changes. So it'll be a continual growth and evolution as you learn how to connect people.
And remember, from the first week, I think we talked about, you know, your competitors are probably more likely to talk to you than you imagine. They really are. People like to talk about their success. So one cup of coffee, one lunch, really, it is amazing how much information I've gotten from people who are more than happy to share about their life experience. And so you don't have to make this up or spend every time Google trying to figure things out. If you know someone who you respect, say, hey, I really respect your business. Can I pick your brain about how you did it? And I would bet 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. And if they say 1, they're jerks. If they say no, I mean, they're a jerk. But the point is, like, it really is like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then you can take what they did. And like Ayries said, you could try it, see if it works for you. You know, like what works for you or what doesn't. I've studied the marketing of, you know, 50 to 60 people, picking little pieces from each one that I liked, little images. Like my website, my first website before Ayries totally redid it, was based on a competitor. And I really liked the way he did it, so I just copied it.
And I think that what Rob says is really important. It's a really important point too, because it goes back to that level of iteration and continuing to ask questions and then kind of course correct, and also not having that vulnerability and not having an ego where like, oh, okay, this isn't working. Oh, I'm going to ask people and I might sound like a total idiot, but I'll get some really good feedback from them. I'm going to put my product out there and see what happens. And being okay with being vulnerable. And because I found business and brand marketing specifically, especially marketing yourself or something that you really care about, is a really humbling process that can really be really scary, right? To have like, feel like you're going to get attacked, especially with social media where there's trolls and things like that. But knowing that, you know, it's just that process of growth and iteration and continuing to put yourself out there, asking your competitors, hey, can I get coffee with you? Asking your market, going to different events, going to conferences, going to Facebook groups, Quora, Amazon book reviews, all of these ways of gathering that information and then trying something and testing it to see what works. And I would have to say too, so the channel that you use really depends on your product, your market, your resources, long-term goals, and your industry and competition, right? So when thinking about, and I think that's a really important idea here is I kind of hate this saying, but it's the best saying I have for it, but there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? And some ways are better than other ways. Some ways get you to your goal a lot quicker, but maybe they take a lot of money in the beginning. And some maybe you can still get there, but it's a little bit slower because you're earning the money as you go. So that's where it comes back to that whole process of what am I offering? Who is it serving? And why is it serving? Why am I serving them? And how is it making their lives better? And then from there, figuring out, okay, well, what channels am I going to use to market on? And here's some examples. So this is a company I work with, Murdoch Plumbing. They are a hometown plumbing company. They don't want a franchise. They just want to grow a company for their children to take over and give back to their local community. They're not on Twitter. They're not on Pinterest. We do some work on Facebook. I was like, you guys need to get a website. You need to get on Google, and you need to get a lot of reviews. And you got, have high quality website, video, photography, things like that. Because they didn't need all of that other stuff. They don't need an Instagram. They don't need, maybe one day they could, have some really cool inventive ideas for doing an Instagram or something like that, or a Twitter account that's a mean plumbing account. I don't know, but that all takes a lot of money in the long term. So when you think about that, think about what are your long-term goals as a company and what do you need then to get successful, right? And then if you think about Rob, who's my other example, he wanted to write and launch a book. He wanted to help as many people globally as possible. He wanted to teach live courses. He wanted to speak at conferences. He wanted to travel. And so the tools he needed were very different of how do I reach as many people as possible? How do I funnel as many people back to my website? How do I create products that are digital that can reach a wide audience? And so his long-term goals are very different than, say, like a plumbing company. So it needs a very different approach that's very unique to your own business. And so for everybody kind of here thinking about that, like, what do I need to go forward, basically, right? What is my company going to need? What tools, channels, social media, etc. will I need to go forward? How much time do we have left?
Yeah, about 8 minutes before the questions.
Okay, well, let's just go into this then. So this is kind of, I think, what you guys have there's all that information, right? And so how do I do this? Because it seems really overwhelming. And so the one is just to kind of relax and then start doing a lot of writing, a lot of journaling, a lot of talking, a lot of data gathering, right? And that's where I think about clarify. So it's really clarifying on like almost a philosophical level. What are my goals in this world? Like, my goal for my company on a philosophical level is I want to help people remember what it's like to live and experience joy in their lives and in the work they do. And then the way I'm bringing that to the world is by branding and marketing, because I'm showing people your business can be based on passion and be really successful, and this is how you do it. And so when you think about that, think about what is that core thing, and then how do I want to bring it to the world? And then identify is thinking about, okay, well, who is my market then? If I want to bring this thing into the world in this way, which the way you bring it to the world might change. Originally, I wanted to do a whole bunch of social media management and do all the work with, big social media platforms. And then I realized I really didn't like doing that. It was not as fun as I thought it was. So I course corrected. And so it's identifying, first initially, what is my package of my service? Who am I giving it to? And who are, kind of what is my industry that I'm marketing in and that I'm kind of selling this product within? Is it an e-commerce store? Is it a, massage and health industry? Is it the, personal growth industry? Is it whatever? Is it service-based? Like I actually have is chocolates and candies and foods, a restaurant. So thinking about that and then visualizing is then going through the process of, well, what is the visual identity for this company? And this part can be very hard to do on your own. Visualizing and creating a brand identity, unless you're a graphic designer, unless you're, kind of like a product expert, it's really hard to do the visualize on your own. This is the part where you have to put money into a company to really figure out, okay, I need someone to create my brand identity. I need them to create, the photo filters that are going to go on my social media. I need them to create a website that, or, you can build one on Squarespace and kind of get things going. But as your business grows and goes forward, the visualized part, it's best to hire professionals, because it's just really hard to build a logo if you don't know how to use Adobe Illustrator. And then there's Amplify. So Amplify is then thinking about, okay, I've built a visual identity. I know how I want my photos to look on Instagram. And when you're thinking about your visual identity, is you want to think about, how do I make it really consistent? And for people who are just starting out, the best form of consistency is, say, using the exact same photo filter on all of your Instagram photos, using your logo, in a single color or a two-tone logo, and using that, picking 3 colors and using those 3 colors consistently throughout your brand will build that level of trust and connection with your market. And then you can grow on it as your company, of course, gets bigger and you get professional branding done and they add in all these different unique, interesting pieces. But really thinking about, in the beginning, simple, clear, and consistent. Consistency is the most important thing. And
can I talk about this for a second? I think this is really important. So I hired someone to do my social media a long time ago. And she was a really nice person. She was great. And she started to build my Instagram, and she started pulling quotes and pictures. And then none of the colors really matched up. None of the pictures really matched up. And so, I didn't know what I was doing, and I put my faith in her, et cetera, et cetera. The point was, it just looked disparate. And now if you look at my Instagram, there's just a similar feel, a psychological feel that you don't even know what's happening. And so maybe you could explain, just go down the baseline, what is a filter and how does one do that so they really understand that piece?
Yeah, so say if a lot of you guys will probably use Instagram or somewhat photos and things like that for your for different parts of your content, right? So think about, and this is the easiest way to do it if you don't have a lot of skills or you don't have a lot of money, or you kind of want to save time and things like that. So putting even basically the Instagram filters like that, you could just use a filter to put over top of it so all of it kind of has the same color tones. You don't want to do anything too extreme, just a way to make all of the pictures look consistent. And then you want to do that with pictures on your website as well. Say if you have to get stock photos or you're collecting photos from, I don't know, maybe your iPhone or of headshots of you or of different events that you've taught at. So you want to have a filter, and you can build a filter. There's a great software called Visco. Visco does great filters. They're super easy to use. It's like an app that you do on your phone or on your computer. Very low learning curve. And so you just want to make sure, even if it's very new, to have that consistency in imagery is really the important one. And then also having consistency in your logo. So if you have a logo or a certain kind of way that you sign your name, keeping that consistent as well. Picking one type font, say, and you can get a free Google type font, but having one of those and using that consistently for everything that you do. And then picking 3 colors. And when you pick colors, this one's really difficult. And this is also why it's so much easier to hire someone to work with you on this kind of stuff. But you want your colors to be really simple and really clean. Usually 2 more neutral tones. Like Rob's main colors are black, white, and then he has that red that's a pop. And then the light blue is accent, right? But you don't see it's red everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
His website isn't red everywhere. It's it's clean, it's blacks, it's whites, it's really open spaces and streamlined, and then we add the blue and the red to accentuate it. So thinking about that too when you're building your brand, and even if you're building it just initially in the beginning and you're creating content, think of how do I have baselines and then add elements in that make it more interesting. And this is all a little difficult and it can be a little bit confusing, but really just thinking consistency across everything. And I can also send out I have a whole list of apps and different stuff like that is really easy to use for creating photo filters, creating different things, places to go to get things, stuff like that. So I'll send it out and it'll kind of be like a toolbox, a marketing branding toolbox is a great idea to put it. Amplify then is just, how am I going to reach people? and thinking about I guess I should probably dive into social media a little bit. That's probably what something people want, or we can go into questions.
Let's just see, just we want to just finish up and then let's ask questions. If no one asks questions, then we can go back into social media. So if you have a question, just pop it in chat and I'll read it for you. Go ahead. And did you finish Solidify? Did you want to just finish up this one slide?
Solidify is then just kind of when you get to that point of in your business where you actually have a clear mission statement, you have a clear marketing channel, you have a clear product and a target market, and it's really solidified and you can begin to push it out from there. So once you've given, like what Rob was saying, it changes and it grows, but like you want to stay away from like, one day my colors are pink and then the next day I'm going to be green and then maybe I'm going to be blue, but keeping it consistent and solidified once you kind of really find the foundation and not changing it up too heavily, where it creates distrust with your market and with people because you feel erratic. And it's just like a person, right? If they're changing personalities every day, you're going to be like, you don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing with your company's voice. So the way you talk about things, the things you talk about, and the colors that you use, the kind of imagery you use, all of that kind of stuff is all about consistency. And then making sure if you do change, you notify people as well. You always want to tell people why you're changing, what's happening, so it doesn't, and you think like, oh, that stuff shouldn't matter, but it totally does. People, it's just like, you changed. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I can trust you. What if you just change on me again? Which is totally, like base level fight or flight kind of mammalian reactions, but it's just kind of how people are. It's the biology of it. And so not trying to fight biology on those kind of things, of just being like, okay, I have to build trust. This is how I do it. This is how I be very honest, very open. And that's also why I kind of put that focus on doing the research and the observation in the back end so that it's less likely that you'll have to change and switch things up on the front end. Because that's a lot of work. I've done that with clients where we totally revamp. They learned, like, once we did competitive research, she was like, wow, my colors are exactly, for my company, are exactly the same as 10 other people in this industry. And she was like, my font basically looks like the same one. And so we were like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. So we went back to the drawing board and redid all of it, which was a lot of time and energy and money. So really just doing that due diligence and research and balancing kind of the left brain masculine with the right brain, feminine of, oh, I want it to be pretty and this and that and my passions. But then there's like the reality of, selling things and marketing and online platforms and social media. How do I merge those two? Beautifully.
We have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Tom wants to know, I would like to know if I got it right, that you talked about using your inner muse as support/guidance. If so, I'd like to know even more. So maybe if you want to talk more about, after presenting this, how you listen to your inner muse to help you point your company.
So I would say from my experience, listening to your inner muse is really letting, and this is, I initially do this work with clients where in the beginning I'm like, okay, we're just going to run wild with it. Run wild with your dreams, your visions, what you want. Do exercises, figure out and there's a ton of different exercises. I can include some of them in the toolbox, but of just figuring out what is this thing inside of me that wants to come out. And mine is, I want to help people remember, the joy of being alive again. And I want them to remember how beautiful life is. And that is such a abstract philosophical thing. But it's just continuing to do that journaling and that writing and really that self-excavation in whatever way it is. I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of guided meditations. I do a lot of talking with mentors. And it may shift over time. It shifts, but that core belief in that muse is that core thing that's in here, it's not concrete. I want to bring, massage therapy franchises to all of the world that do certain things with, I don't know, essential oils. But it's that more of that ambiguous philosophical mission that you really want to bring forward, basically, right? You know, because even if you think of, and that's the thing that people galvanize around. Like if you think about Tesla, they don't, Tesla, whether you hate Elon Musk or not, Tesla's big thing is, you know, they don't say, oh, we just make electric cars. That's not what they do. They're innovating humanity. That's Tesla's thing, right? Which is this big, huge why. And then the way they're innovating is, you know, that boring machine they have, electric cars and SpaceX where they're sending things into space. But it's the bigger why that you have, and just doing the work to explore and be honest and find out what it is. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. Rob could probably give you 500 different ways of his unhidden path, where you have to just be honest. And I think that's the biggest thing, is being honest, really, really honest with the reality of where you are. Because if you're like, I want to be a millionaire, and you have $0 in your bank account and you're $50,000 in debt, and you're like, I want to be a millionaire by the end of the year, I mean, probably not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But if you're like, okay, I want to be a millionaire, or if I do want to be a millionaire by the end of the year, what do I need to sacrifice and do to get there? And so being really, really honest with that to bring this thing into the world. I think by and large, honesty and reality, facing reality as it is, and then working from there without the excuses or the whining, or my life's been hard, or I don't have privilege, or everything's stacked against me. It's like recognizing those things and being like, this is the vision I have. I'm doing the work to figure out what it is and finding clarity, and then taking the hits as I try to bring it to the world.
It's beautiful. And so Tom had a follow-up question is, so it could be an inner archetype or power animal and guardian spirits as guides as well? And I think the answer is yes. Whatever form your inner voice comes from, it's important to listen.
And I would make sure, you know, that the kind of underlying mission is maybe just like 1 or 2 sentences, right? It's not just like this, I want to change the trajectory of humanity's like huge paragraphs, but like, this is the, 1, 2 sentences really clear of who I am and what I want, what I want the philosophy and the mission of this big idea that I have to be. You know, the clearer you make it and the clearer you can kind of continue to refine it. And like, one thing I've done is I literally just like talk to people about it, and then I write down something, and I'm like, if I say this, does it make sense? And if they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm like, okay. And I go back and I'm like, how do I make this as clear as possible? So if I said it to a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old will be like, that's really cool, I totally get it. You know, like having that level of clarity with this thing versus like pages and pages of just like, stuff.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions out there? Maybe if not, we'll just talk a couple more minutes on social media and wrap up.
Is there anything that anyone is like confused on, or that felt kind of like they didn't really get it, or is a little overwhelming, or that they want me to maybe kind of give a little bit more detail on? Because you'll get this slideshow, but it's also when you're first getting into it, which is why marketing is such, an expensive field and such a such a big field, right? Because there's so many pieces to it, and it's such an important part of having a business. Marketing and branding is. So if there's anything in that realm that people want me to maybe extrapolate a little on, or they were confused on.
They feel quiet today. Yeah, it is overwhelming. It's funny. As soon as you put up the first slide, I felt overwhelmed, and I've been working on this shit heavy, and I hired you, and like, I really have spent a lot of time. It is intense. And I think a lot of part of it has to do with the psychological piece, is to, there is a fear of really bringing yourself out to the forefront. Mm-hmm. Like the concept of marketing is setting yourself up with a brand to resemble your business, yourself, whatever you're selling, and then having the courage to bring it out into the future, into the limelight, out of the shadows, front of the curtain, which is a psychological thing, which, Dave Burns will be talking about a bit, but example, of that, of just the ability to go out there in the world is tough. Esther wrote,
Yep.
so great if we have any examples. There are slides in the slide deck we went over. So those are available in the slide deck.
And I think the thing too that will probably help a lot of people is when doing this, picking one thing. I call it sequencing basically. And this is what we did with Rob, where it was like, we're going to pick one social media channel and we are going to make it amazing. And we are going to focus our attention into it. We are going to grow that thing and we are going to, amplify it. Not picking, 70 million different ones, but thinking about what, and I have this on this slide, leverage what gets cash in the door first, and then add more step by step. So if it's like, okay, I can't build a website, but I can build a really great landing page with some like great custom photography, and I can pay someone to get my branding and help get my voice down. And then I can do a landing page, and then I can start selling to clients and getting an iteration on this product. Okay, great. Now I have cash in the door, which now I have revenue, and I can, okay, now I need another phase of website. Now I'm going to build out this next phase of website. And now that my Instagram has, 5,000, 10,000 people, which will take a very long time, I'm going to now focus on, this other channel, or I'm just going to focus on Facebook and doing Facebook time lives and doing, getting into groups and posting really good content and trying to build my engagement with Facebook and learning everything I can about Facebook. And that way you cut down on the overwhelm. Because the thing is, to be successful, you don't need all the channels. I mean, big companies have all the channels because they have a lot of money to waste. And so they do things like build Instagram channels when they're a company that probably doesn't really need one. Like, you've probably seen Instagram channels for big companies, and you're like, why do they have a channel? Really, who follows them? But thinking about, what channel can I pick? Maybe if it's, I want to do email marketing, right? I want to sell people my product through email, and then focusing on is that as your main channel to bring and sell people, get people on my list, get a lead magnet to get people on my list. How do I get that lead magnet in front of people? How do I get them on my list? How do I write the emails and build that out? Like really being very almost like Jedi focused on having a sequence about the things and making it into little bite-sized chunks. And I do this with no matter if your business is just starting or if you're a big, $1 million company, it's about how do you sequence your growth, also so you don't overwhelm yourself. Because if you're trying to grow, 15, 20 different things at a time, 10, 15 different products, it's just the same thing. Pick one package that you have, one service, and really focus on selling that and growing that. Or pick one, methodology. Like for a long time with Rob, it was the book. We are putting our energy into the book and marketing the book and focusing on the book.
Yep. And now it's expanding. Now, 2018 was to build the book, but I'm still recovering from it. And now it's slowly a communication course. And then it's going to be coaching circles and there's next steps, but having the right speed. Because if you try to do too much too quickly, you don't do anything right. And then the foundation blows. All right. So I think that's it. I think that's our final question. I want to thank you so much for coming on our mastermind and doing such an amazing job. And thank you for contributing on the Facebook group.
Yeah. And if anyone has any questions, thoughts, ideas, if they want to reach out to me or anything like that, you can just email me at ayries@discovermuse.com. I'll put that in the group or anything like that. So if people want to reach out, they can totally reach out and ask questions. You can get on my Facebook. I put a lot of content on my Facebook, things like that. Or post questions in the group. Yep.
And if you're looking for a great branding and marketing person, I can personally say she's done an amazing job with me, and I've been very, very happy with the service.
And if you guys want to, I have it where I don't usually do like coaching or private consulting. We usually do bigger kind of projects like what I did with Rob. But if you guys want, I've kind of slotted some time aside for you guys where we can spend a couple hours going through identity, getting clarity, really figuring out, okay, well, what is this kind of voice that I have? What's this thing I want to bring forward? What is my brand identity? And getting that started and then building what I call like a marketing blueprint, basically. It's, okay, this is what I need to focus on. I need to build a lead magnet. I need to build, this little basic website. I need to get a logo. I need to da-da-da-da. And those steps which then build the bigger thing. So if you got anybody's interested in that, we can, kind of schedule something, set it up. If you want, yeah, I guess that's it. I can email it out or send it to Rob, or if you're interested, you can just send me an email to my email at ayries@discovermuse.com. And just remember that business is a long game, and it's all about consistency and perseverance, because you will want to quit somewhere along the way.
It's very true.
And probably hate your life, but it will all be worth it.
Great. All right, guys, thank you so much. And next week, we're learning about press and media. I'll see you in the group. And thank you so much for coming by. And thank you again to Ayries for such an amazing presentation. All right, guys, take care. See you next week.